Welcome to the Blog Millionaire, where we break down the essential strategies of today's most successful bloggers to take your blog to the next level with top-notch content, monumental traffic growth, and multiple revenue streams to go beyond your wildest goals. So get ready to blog like a pro and make your traffic explode with your host, whose blog gets more than 1 million visitors every single month, Brandon Gailey.
I'm Brandon Gailey, and welcome to episode number 4. Today, we're going to be talking about how to use Pinterest to drive referral traffic to your blog. Specifically, I'm going to cover 23 expert Pinterest tips that will basically triple your referral traffic if you apply them. Now, when it comes to long-term social media traffic, Pinterest is the king. The shelf life of a Facebook post is between 3 to 24 hours. A Pinterest post, though, can essentially drive referral traffic forever. I have pins from 3 years ago that generate more traffic today than the day that I posted them. Pecora did a study and found that the half-life of Pinterest traffic is 3.5 months, and 40% of the overall traffic from pins occur between month 4 and 24. So that lets you know that 50% of all visits from Pinterest occur after 3.5 months of the first pin. Over the last 2 years, I have studied and applied the techniques of the most successful Pinterest accounts. In this time, I have built my monthly Pinterest referral traffic to over 30,000 unique visitors. Are you ready to become a power pinner that receives a boatload of residual referral traffic from Pinterest? Let's go ahead and get right into the keys to success. Number 1, you want to pin at least 5 times a day for maximum engagement. The most effective way to boost the amount of traffic and interaction that your Pinterest account sees is by increasing the amount of times that you post every day. When people see that you consistently post to your profile in their feed, they are much more likely to share and take notice. Buffer researched 2 Pinterest studies by Pecora and Ahology, and they found that posting at least 5 times a day had the biggest impact. So this study supports the fact that you need to post 5 times a day. Number 2, space out the times you pin to avoid clogging your followers' feeds. While you should definitely be posting many times per day, try not to do them all at once. When you post over and over in a short period of time, you're going to crowd your audience's news feeds, and they are much more likely to unfollow you in that case. Number 3, choose the right color, saturation, background, and texture for the maximum number of repins. Colors, compositions, and subjects are just a few of the key factors that influence the total Pinterest engagement. For example, pins that are composed of light colors are 20% more likely to be repinned than those that have dark colors. Curate examined 500,000 images on Pinterest and found 8 traits that lead to an image getting repinned more than the others. I'm going to quickly cover these 8 traits that Curate found. Now, on the show notes page, I'm going to have specific visual examples so that you can see exactly what they're referring to. If any of this doesn't make sense on the podcast, be sure to go to the show notes page at theblogmillionaire.com/04. So the first area that they compared was the color. They found that images that had reddish orange got twice as many repins as images that are blue. So the takeaway here is try to incorporate red or orange into your images and try to stay away from bluish images. Then they looked at number of colors. So they compared images that had multiple dominant colors versus images that only had single dominant colors. So an example of a single dominant color would be a black and white image. An example of multiple dominant colors would be if you had different colored flowers showing reds, greens, yellows. Images with multiple dominant colors had 3 times more repins than the single dominant color images. They also looked at lightness. They compared pins that had medium lightness versus pins that were very dark. The images with medium lightness were repinned 20 times more than the dark images. Takeaway here is stay away from pins and images that are dark. The next trait is saturation. Images that are 50% saturated had 10 times more repins than the ones that were very desaturated. The next trait they looked at was aspect ratio. They compared very tall images to images that were using a 2:3 aspect ratio. They found that vertical images with an aspect ratio between 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 got 60% more repins than the very tall images. The next trait they looked at was background. They found that images with less than 10% background received 2 to 4 times more repins than images with greater than 40% background. An example of something with greater than 40% background would be a pair of sunglasses sitting on a white table so that the focus is just on the pair of sunglasses and there's not much background other than white. The next trait they looked at was texture. Images with a smooth texture were repinned 17 times more than images with a rough texture. Finally, they compared images of faces versus images that did not have faces. Brand images without faces received 23% more repins than the images with faces. So if you're going to create custom images that you're going to pin, for example, of you cutting a piece of cake, when you're cutting that piece of cake, you want the focus to be on the cake and your hands and not to include your entire body and face. Let's move on to tip number 4. Post pins in group boards to reach a larger audience. Pinterest allows you to pin posts to your own boards, and you also have the ability to join group boards. These are boards that multiple people can post to, and they appear to each one of their followers. By doing this, you're able to reach a much larger audience beyond your existing followers. The best way to find Pinterest groups with a large following is to use the website PinGroupie. So it's pingroupie.com. You can browse the groups by most followers, repins, and even search for specific keywords. Now, just to remind you, all of the links that I mention in this podcast are going to be in the show notes page at theblogmillionaire.com/04. Now, it's also important that you go to the show notes page because I have visual examples for everything that I'm discussing here. And that's really important with Pinterest because it's going to allow you to see exactly what you need to be doing and allow you to have templates and examples to use for your own pins. Let's move on to tip number 5. Pin at peak times to increase your visibility. With each and every social media platform, there are certain times that more users are active. Knowing these times can be very powerful because your post will be seen by more people and gain more engagement. My Clever Agency found that the best times to post on Pinterest were between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're wondering what the worst time to post is, it's 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There's a lot of great post schedulers out there that you can automatically schedule all your posts to go out during these time periods so that you can get a bump in your engagement. Tip number 6, promote Pinterest boards to your other social media accounts. You want to integrate all of your social media accounts and spread the word of your Pinterest posts to everyone. Followers on your other platforms will gain interest and end up following you on Pinterest when you do this. A study by Pew Research Center identified that Instagram users actually have the highest percentage of participation on Pinterest out of all of the major networks. All this basically means is that your Instagram followers have the best chance of converting to Pinterest followers. Common sense at the end of the day, Instagram is visual, Pinterest is visual. That's where the most crossover is going to be. Tip number 7, show up in more user feeds by frequently liking pins. Repinning is one way to show up in user activity feeds, but liking works just as well. If you come across content that doesn't necessarily fit the niche that you are posting for, you can like it by hitting the heart button as opposed to repinning it. Likes show up in your activity feed just like pins do and can help you persuade people to check out your boards and follow you. Tip number 8, use scheduling apps to keep your posts consistent. You can schedule your posts to certain times of the day and get all of your pinning for the entire week out of the way quickly. This also allows you to focus on those key peak times that I mentioned earlier and get more engagement out of your pins. This makes Pinterest a relatively hands-off activity that is still very powerful for your marketing. Here are a couple of the best tools for scheduling pins. Viral Woot, Curate, and Viral Tag. Out of these three, Viral Woot is my personal favorite. Number 9, add a call to action in your pin to increase engagement. Your description can be made of very powerful text that can add to your overall effectiveness of your post. Adding a call to action has proven to increase a pin's popularity by as much as 80%. Simply add in some words like, pin this to your own technology board at the end of your description. This is going to make the people that are reading your pin description take action more often than if it weren't there. You can also create an image that has the call to action built directly into it. An example of this would be an image that has text inside of it that says, for every repin, we will donate 50 cents to clean water. So in this way, you're not making them read the description to see your call to action. It's actually built into your pin. And this works really well with any types of contest. Tip number 10, utilize SEO techniques in your pins to show up first in Pinterest search. Just like you have Google search, there are a big portion of Pinterest users that are consistently going to Pinterest and searching for certain types of pins. You can use keyword research to identify the phrases that Pinterest users are searching for on a consistent basis, and then incorporate those keywords into your pin. Here are some of the core elements of Pinterest SEO that I personally use. I start by using SEMrush or Google Keyword Planner to identify the keywords that people are searching for related to my image. So if I have an image of a chocolate cheesecake, I would start by doing keyword research for chocolate cheesecake and see if there are any long tail phrases. Then I take that target keyword phrase that I found, and then I call the image by that specific keyword phrase. So for example, the image name might be chocolate-cheesecake.jpg. And finally, I incorporate the target keyword phrase into the pin title and description. So I'll make sure to use chocolate cheesecake in the title of my pin, and I'll make sure to use chocolate cheesecake somewhere in the description. If your blog posts are already optimized for Google search, then rich pins will automatically pull the title and description from any pinned image within a blog post. So moving on to tip number 11, we're going to be talking about rich pins. You want to set up rich pins on your blog to increase the referral traffic. Rich pins is a free feature that is offered to all Pinterest users. It allows you to create pins that contain more information than the typical normal pin. You can add prices, direct links to purchase, maps, and even more detailed specifications about products. I set up rich pins on my blog, and my traffic increased by 500% almost overnight. Once you connect your domain to your Pinterest account, you just need to add a piece of code to your blog. Then every pin that is tied to a post is automatically updated with the titles and descriptions of your posts. So as I mentioned earlier, if your blog is already optimized for SEO with great titles and great descriptions, then what happens is every single pin that's ever been pinned by yourself or someone else on your blog is going to get updated with rich pins, and they're going to pull that title and description that's on every single post and update to your pins. And at that point, you have all those keywords that have been used on your blog titles. They're going to be used for your pins. And that optimization will apply to Pinterest search. And that's, for me, is what drove my traffic up by 500% within a matter of about 7 days of launching rich pins. Tip number 12, pin infographics to increase the number of click-throughs. The details of an infographic are usually not legible within the Pinterest news feeds. This leads users to click on thumbnails to see the larger version of the infographic. Take your time in coming up with a good pin title, because that will greatly influence the click-through rates on your infographics. If you want to take this a step further, then you can create a special version of the infographic just for Pinterest. Remove the bottom half of the infographic and replace it with a call to action that reads, "Click here to see the entire infographic." If the pin is linked to your blog post, then the visitors will be taken there when they click. Tip number 13, use the Unicode heart symbol to increase total repins. Georgia Tech studied over 900,000 pinners in an effort to find out what drove activity on Pinterest. They found that there were certain words that resonated most within Pinterest users. The top 7 Pinterest words were DIY, the symbol for a Unicode heart, cup, cute, recipe, dress, and idea. The top action verbs were use, look, want, and need. The big takeaway here is to try to incorporate some of these words that are proven to drive more pins into your title and description when you can. The complete list of these words are located in the show notes page. Tip number 14, incorporate links into your pin descriptions to drive more traffic to your website. Pinterest gives you the ability to add links into each and every description for your post. You can use this to your advantage by directing viewers to your website or your specific blog post. A shortened version of the URL via a bit.ly link will get the most clicks, and then it makes it real easy to keep track of where they're coming from in case you're doing A/B testing. Tip number 15, size your images 735 pixels wide by 1102 pixels tall to get the most attention. Now, this goes back to the Curate study that I was talking about earlier in regards to aspect ratio. Certain image sizes work better than others. 735 pixels wide by 1102 pixels tall has been proven to be the best size and ratio for Pinterest images. Just create a template in Photoshop or another photo editing software to ensure that each image that you push out through Pinterest is the perfect size. Dan Zarella did a study on a sample of 11,000 images on Pinterest, and he found that the taller images had the most repins. Specifically, images that had a height over 800 had more repins than images with less than 800 for their height. Tip number 16, start your own group board and invite power pinners to post. Group boards are great to participate in, but they are also great to start yourself. You can create boards and then invite the most active pinners to contribute. This will increase the amount of people that see all of your content in the board and on your profile. Tip number 17, pin your products often with rich pins to increase total sales. As I already talked about rich pins, there's a lot of benefits, but you can now pin your business products and include a direct link to purchase. Use this as much as possible when you're promoting your business and your brand. Number 18, use more white space to catch the attention of your viewers. If you overclutter an image with too much text and graphics, you will blend into the Pinterest grid. By incorporating white space within each of your images, your pins are going to stand out and get more engagement. Number 19, add text to your photos to increase total shares. Studies have shown that photos with a small amount of text directly on the image get better results than those that don't. This is because people are more likely to share a post that clearly says what it is about. And this works perfectly for blog posts because you can include your blog title onto the image that you're going to pin. Tip number 20, review Pinterest analytics to identify what is getting pinned the most. Keep an eye on your stats. By monitoring the Pinterest analytics of all of your posts, you are able to expand upon trends that are driving the most repins and referral traffic. Now, I mentioned earlier on in this podcast that when I switched over to rich pins, my traffic jumped. Now, I was able to see that my traffic jumped specifically from Pinterest by logging into my Pinterest account and pulling up my Pinterest analytics. By being able to quickly see that rich pins made a huge difference, I was able to leverage that and take it a step further over the next couple of months just by implementing a few changes on my blog post. Tip number 21, organize your profile so that your most popular boards are seen first. Pinterest allows you to organize your boards however you want. Simply drag and drop your most popular boards into the top row to showcase your best pins to new visitors. This is going to increase the conversion rate of new followers that may be browsing and seeing a pin on Pinterest and then going over to your profile. When they see your best content at the top, it increases the chances that they will follow you. Tip number 22, follow more people to get more followers. A study of 45,000 Pinterest users by the University of Minnesota identified the 6 most important factors that contributed to increasing the number of followers that Pinterest accounts had. These 6 things were the total number of users someone follows, the overall number of pins the account has, the number of boards a person has, the amount of pins created with the DIY and crafts category, the amount of pins created with the hair and beauty category, the amount of pins created within the design category. The big takeaway here is that you want to follow a lot of people that are interested in the things that you post. And it's also important that if your pins fall into the categories of DIY, crafts, hair, beauty, and design, that you pin in those categories often, because these are going to be the most popular categories, and the most popular categories are going to drive more pins, repins, and more followers to your account. Number 23, post pins in the most popular categories to get more pins. The most popular categories are where most pinners are spending their time browsing pins. It is a no-brainer to consistently pin within these categories. Now, I touched upon this a little bit earlier. The same University of Minnesota study that identified the influencing factors of an account's total followers also identified the 32 most popular categories on Pinterest. The top 5 categories were food and drinks, DIY crafts, home decor, women's fashion, and other. Now, this entire list of all the most popular categories is on the show notes page at theblogmillionaire.com/04. At this point, you are fully equipped to turn your Pinterest account into a traffic referring machine. Please take a short moment when you get home, and if you're home right now, take the time to jot down a simple plan for taking your Pinterest account to the next level. Go to the show notes page, review all of the tips I just covered, look at the visual examples, because the visual examples are going to make it easier for you to grasp these concepts and apply them to your Pinterest pins. And if you do only one thing from all of these tips, then apply rich pins to your blog. As I mentioned, when I applied rich pins to my blog, all my pins updated, and within a matter of a week, my Pinterest traffic went from a mere 1,000 to 3,000 visitors per month to over 15,000 visitors per month, and now it's well over 30,000. And the majority of that is due to rich pins. Now I incorporate all of the other pin tips in here to take my traffic to the next level. But the one big takeaway here is use rich pins on your blog posts. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in for this episode of The Blog Millionaire. Go over to theblogmillionaire.com now to sign up to the waiting list for Brandon's exclusive online course that breaks down exactly how he gets over 1 million monthly visitors to his blog. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes, and please take a moment to write a review for our podcast in the App Store.